So, thank you very much. We are already right in the topic, I think, talking about the clinical knowledge manager and the archetypes and their involvement. What I want to do today is talk about some of the achievements of the past years, the lessons we've learned, and what the future may hold, just a short glimpse, and how this can contribute towards an open digital health ecosystem. But maybe quickly, my company, Ocean Health System, was founded over 25 years ago. And the explicit aim of it was to actually bring openEHR from research into practice. So we've been the first to implement the openEHR specifications in a commercial setting, to implement modeling tools, to offer an openEHR-based platform actually at the time to vendors, some clinical applications, and of course the clinical knowledge manager, which is what I'm talking about today. So when we talk about a digital ecosystem, digital health ecosystem, do we actually know what we are talking about? So I thought it was a rather fluffy concept in a way. So I just had a look, and these are the three first random definitions I came about on the internet. So do we have some agreement here? It's not a monolithic digital healthcare solution. It refers to the connection of healthcare workflows, digital tools, devices, health data. It connects them. It provides new way of managing and providing the right information. And it's the next evolution, how healthcare services are conceptualized, delivered, managed, bringing together data, devices, and people. So I think it's still a bit fluffy, but there's some certain level of agreement. But maybe let's just tackle this from a different perspective, which is what Evelyn Huvenga, Heather Grain have done in their roadmap to successful digital health ecosystems coming from a global perspective. And they take a requirements approach. They say, okay, they propose solutions based on adopting open platforms, standard information models, technology-neutral data repositories, and computable clinical data and knowledge, and in particular, the content models, which is what I want to talk about. Because if we want to use these as a foundation for digital health ecosystem, we need to solve a rather boring problem. It's a problem as boring as this slide, but it's a real-life example. You have a hospital that administers the application of, in this case, a beta blocker in a very structured way. And then you've got a GP app, and this GP app, well, it somehow combines it, and then you've got the patient app, and again, it does something different, something in the middle. Now, we can discuss the advantages and the disadvantages of all this, but in the end, it's often just practical agreement that is lacking, and this is haunting us big time, because this boring problem really has amazing consequences. And with amazing, I literally mean that maze there in the middle. This maze in the middle is where you need to navigate your data through. You need to, each time you want to exchange, and we've heard before that clinical data is complex in itself. So traditional, this is actually often something, it's just the too hard basket, we didn't do this. But even if you try to, you run into this semantic gap. It's always limited, and it's always high effort and high cost. So you can pay a lot of consultants a lot of money all over again. And this is what we're trying to avoid. So there are no easy solutions to this. But wouldn't it be great to just have a set of maybe internationally agreed high quality clinical data models, clinical content models that are really inclusive, that have everything in them, have it translated in languages all over the world, have it just available for everybody who comes along for the next project. So if you like, it's the lingua franca of healthcare, which then can be this foundation for a global open digital health ecosystem. Now, and this is what we've been working on. You may say it's a lofty aim, and it is, but we've been working on this for well over 15 years now. And I can tell you these challenges, they are quite real. It's also real, the complexity is real, but it's also hard to get clinicians to engage with this. They don't want to sit in committee meetings, even if you pay them and, well, define what a blood pressure is or how to model a medication order and all these things. And this is why we developed for openEHR, the openEHR Clinical Knowledge Manager, also simply called the CCAN, to upload these models, to govern them, to review them, and to publish them. But to do so, we need to have a wide range of skills all coming together. So they're the editors and clinical knowledge administrators on the openEHR International CKM. And they oversee the models. They need to ensure that they are all kind of coherent, they work together, and that's no small task. And they invite clinical reviewers to work on, to review these models. They create review rounds and work on them. And once they are published, they're not finished. Then you've got terminologists, adding bindings to SNOMED CT, adding bindings to LOINC, translators, adding all the translations into various languages, ensuring this is all consistent. And there are review rounds for this as well if you want. And then there are national governing bodies. They do a lot of reporting. Maybe they publish these as a release set nationally, and maybe provide them to system vendors just for use. And we know this release set is all coherent in itself. So this is what you need to bring together. Now let's quickly talk what we have achieved over this period of time so far. Some hard facts. I like to mention the big one in the middle. It's 116 countries now that have users registered in the international CKM. So you don't see too many white spots anymore there. And the latest are Cuba, Congo-Kinshasa, and Niue. You may not have heard of it. It's a small island country in the South Pacific. So this is an amazing figure, I think. And they're all from various health domains and professions, so quite diverse. What we've seen over the years, this has been going up quite a bit. I have to say, a lot of the CKM functionality is just there. You don't need to log in, so just take it in context, what we have here. And I just had a look this morning, so we already surpassed the 2023 figure now. These are a couple of weeks old. So we already passed that now for the whole of 2023, and we did the same for 2022 on that one. So it's definitely going up again this year. There are over 1,200 models in there in all stages of the life cycle. So they start, for example, at an initial stage, but then they are draft, and some of them are currently under review, and 209 archetypes have been published, or their content has been published. Some have been rejected for various reasons, figuring out modeling patterns and so on, and some of them are deprecated in favor of a new major version. So it's important to keep in mind that there is a whole life cycle behind it. Also, these models evolve using change requests, and there's quite a few we've dealt with, also editor tasks, which are more the internal commit this next translation again to the trunk and republish that archetype, for example. But there's always a backlog, and with more funding, I hope we'll be able to do this quicker now with Vebjørn Hansen, for example, as CK lead. But it's a lot of work to do. So these are some quick hard facts, but they are also overall achievements, which are more subjective to me. But I think it's played, or CKM has played a pivotal role in making openEHR visible over the years. So this has been true initially in the initial years, but I think it's still true very much today, because it provides this collaboration space for people to work together on these models, to review them, to have them published. But it also provides a strict governance, and I'll show that in a second. And I believe this is probably already the most comprehensive collection of clinical content models. And it's definitely the most comprehensive one of its high quality clinical content models. And this leads to high reuse around of these models around the world. So based on this is our original vision paper from 2007, and fast forward just 15 years, and you find quite a variety of PubMed papers on openEHR reuse. For example, Heather Leslie's excellent case study on this. But you can just summarize it in these 3 tweets, just saying, okay, we only had to create 1 more or 2 more archetypes. 80% of that stuff was already there, and we did just the national extensions from this. And this is a couple of years old, but I like to mention it because this was the moment where I thought, oh, we are no longer only dreaming, but actually we are making a real difference to health IT here. Okay, hard facts. Nice. Let's talk about a few quick challenges and lessons learned. The first one is, I believe high quality models are really key. And I bet you agree with me on that. But it's not only the end result, it's not only the structure of the architecture, it's also the process that has to be of high quality. And with that I mean, we have these strict governance processes in place. We have a clear provenance of these models ranging back to 2008. We know exactly what has changed. We know how they were reviewed, and we have some quality criteria for that. We have a clear publication life cycle using semantic versioning and so on. It's all based on openEHR's stable reference model, of course. But at the same time, so these are formal things, but at the same time it's important that they are intuitive. So for example, you can just get this from CCAM automatically generated. So if you demand from clinicians to give their input, you cannot demand that they take a masterclass in openEHR first. So please, it needs to be understandable to clinicians right away. But at the same time, and this is what I mean with provenance and strict governance, we know up to 2008 why this archetype was, how it evolved, and how or why it was deprecated in this case for a major version 2. We have all the history there, and I think this is very important to have to prove that these models are valuable and are of high quality. I've mentioned it, it's not only content that is being published, it's also the translations and terminology bindings. And so there are separate review processes for this, but it is important to present this in a way that it's clear. When we publish the content, it's only the content. It's not all translations suddenly published, all the terminology bindings. And this is somewhat of a challenge still, because you want to make this clear to even the casual viewer. The next lesson is something I learned the hard way. We've always been in this space here, creators, editors, and reviewers of the models. They just want to have the latest and greatest archetypes available, just at their fingertips, and work with them, evolve them, publish them. But the more archetypes we have published, the more important the left side is, the consumers of the models, the system vendors, and they want stability. They do not want the latest and greatest all the time. They want to upgrade, yes, but not just like that. So they want to see what is actually stable. And this is a stretch, and some of this leads to extra complexity in CCAM. Now, third lesson is, it's about getting the balance right. Not everything is openEHR. It's more than that. It's the 4 elements of clinical content models, as I like to call them, like the 4 elements of matter. And I'm pretty sure you can at least guess 2 of them. But since we don't have the time, let's just uncover this. And it starts definitely with terminologies, Snowman CT and Loink, and we map them, we bind them to archetypes in CCAM. And then there's FHIR. One thing are FHIR value sets. We have them connected to, for example, an ONTO server. The FHIR value set is on there. We can just reference them in any archetype or template, and it's being displayed in line. Then there's OMOP, research data. Let's not get into this. But finally, it is openEHR that is just pulling this together, and not only openEHR, but also CCAM and openEHR, because we just introduced, for example, a new tab for archetypes to add FHIR bindings, add OMOP bindings to them, just directly connected to the archetypes. Fourth lesson, it's fit-for-purpose tooling. This is what we have. Clinical Knowledge Manager has just been developed for this purpose. And I think it has been key for community building and community engagement. So, I mean, initially I actually considered just having a simple version control Git, or actually at the time Subversion. But you quickly find, if you want to engage clinicians, whatever you do around this, it's likely not enough. And this doesn't mean we publish all these to GitHub, obviously, but it doesn't mean it's our core. The continued development of all this is crucial, I think, still. I mean, we have spec changes. We've just been talking about ADL2 again, these kind of things. But you've also got the lessons learned, just presenting the priorities, just new circumstances, so it's crucial. And of course, you've got these little creepy things always coming in. So you need to deal with it. We've got comprehensive test suites, but it's kind of, as I say, it's very good to have this tool, but it's also quite a bit of effort. Sorry. one challenge we have is things like Jira and Discourse. They have very good functionality for change requests, for tasks, for discussions. But, you know, there is a disconnect. We have the models directly in CCAM and we can add this. So there is a bit of a stretch and we try to get better there, but this is still obviously a challenge we have. Also, this is the fifth and penultimate lesson, appropriate funding remains a challenge for this. And this is true on the left for the modeling work. We have still so many unpublished, unreviewed draft models. We've got archetype proposals on us, and some we may not even have thought of. We've got a backlog of change requests, the translations, the terminology bindings, a lot of work to do. But this is often, it's a global challenge, I think, that we have. But the funding sources are actually often national or regional. So there's a bit of a disconnect, and the same is actually true for the tooling work. Ocean, we provide the international CCAM instance for free of charge to openEHR International, because we recognize the need to make openEHR visible for its success, and to have these models. We really want to have these models and have them defined once and for all. But it requires obviously funding as well, and that's rather on a national and regional level. So it's a challenge, this funding. And this leads to the ultimate final conclusion. The digital health problem space is beyond our control, essentially beyond our control. You know, Rachel has been so good at getting players together from the healthcare arena, get everybody work together. But having said that, there's still lots of different projects in different countries with all these different people, all the different methodologies they are using. So, and of course, all the languages, which remains a barrier for everything. So it's by and large still beyond our control. Just consider all these players, and just a small selection. You have openEHR, obviously, you've got local providers at the bottom, and then there's a lot in the middle. Medical colleges, national nursing organizations like Cat Salute, openEHR Switzerland, maybe the NHS, and so on and so on. And I could only list very few, of course, and I haven't even mentioned the multinational levels, the EU, POW in the Caribbean, these kind of things. So is it a top-down approach? Is it bottom-up? Or is it something? And I think that's what it is. It's going inside out. A lot of action is in the middle. We cannot mandate it all, and we don't have the resources to do it. So we have to deal with this. And how we deal with it is this way. And there have been some misunderstandings about this. The International Clinical Knowledge Manager has the core archetypes, and we can federate them to other CCAMs, which are national or regional. They are not just new archetypes on there. Wherever we can, we use the ones from the International Clinical Knowledge Manager and work with them in regional instances. That is what we do. And then you need to define new ones, yes, and you hopefully, at some stage, feed them back to the international CCAM. And now this stuff is well supported, and this is something only clinical knowledge administrators would actually see. This is how it's done in CCAM. When you have an international CCAM connected with a national CCAM, you can pull down all the archetypes at your own leisure. When you have the requirement, you get them. And you can say, for example, it's a stable revision, you want the latest and greatest, you want to update them, but you don't want to update them the moment they appear on the international CCAM, but when you are ready as a country, as a region, as whatever. And this is what makes it, I think, a useful tool and how it's being federated. And then you can do your templating and packaging and so on. So there are some achievements. We've learned quite a few things, and some of the challenges I've listed, they're still there. But let's just conclude with a short glimpse into the future. And when I say this, CCAM has always been driven by the requirements and priorities of the modeling work on the international level, as well as the requirements of the national and regional levels. So this is what is driving us. Often they match, sometimes they don't. So let's look at what the requirements actually are. And I think what we'll see in the near future is we'll have more archetype proposals. We have a lot more review rounds, more reviews going on. more published archetypes, hopefully a quicker turnaround for change requests with a paid CK lead on top of this now. I think this will happen. More translations, hopefully, and then all this leading to increased reuse of all these archetypes, and we get better and better over time. And maybe we've talked about OMOP and fire mappings, and we enable this with a tab on CKM, and I'm very sure they will be uploaded very soon, because I know Diego and Son have been working very hard on this. And then maybe we have an international release of openEHR models 1.0. So and this goes along with the requirements for the future of CKM around release sets, federation, reporting, mappings, queries, and actually the elephant in the room, ADL2. And that's still outstanding. We'll see how that goes. So thank you for your attention about past, present, and future of CKM.
Okay, thanks very much, Sebastian. Do we have any questions?
You've shown this pie chart depicting the number of models in the surrounding states. There were about, I think, 200 accepted versus 260, 270 rejected eventually. It means that some labor and money went into initiatives that were binned at the end. Did you think about any technological or process-wise improvements that could be made to the community in order to lower the number of rejected models at the end?
Well, the rejected numbers seem quite high there because, I mean, this is going back to 2008. We keep a record of that stuff. And some of the modeling patterns essentially have been discarded. Some of this, especially how you do clusters and how you integrate them into archetypes. So this has led to some of these rejections. I think you actually won't find that many more from recent years. These are old ones. So
they were technically obsolete.
They were never published. They were just an idea, and we rejected them. They could be deleted, but we want to actually have a record of everything. So that's why that. Usually, I'm not even showing them deprecated and rejected. Then you have a different slice there.
Just open it up. Thank you.
Are there efforts to integrate the national CKMs into one big CKM with different, like maybe in different subgroups or something like that? Because for me, I'm in Germany, and every time we try and see whether there's already somewhere in the openEHR community someone who has done a template for whatever special clinical test, we would basically need to go not only to the official openEHR CKM, but also basically to all the others and have some sort of translation tool in order to find out, oh, maybe there could be someone who has worked on that already. I think what happens instead is there's still a lot that happens on the discourse forum, which is, it's great that there's all this collaboration, but I think this is something where tooling might help.
Yes, you're right. I mean, I think for archetypes we'll just see more and more coming up, and you just have them and you can use them. It's not yet perfect, but we are already quite a long way there. For templates, I mean, they kind of follow suit. So you'll see this, and we can make some improvements to the tool to maybe better discover remote templates as well. Yes, that is a good suggestion. But a lot of the templating remains having local requirements. But as an inspiration, I agree, yes.
And just here for our last question.
Hi, Matt. So, well, first of all, thank you for providing the CKM. It's an invaluable resource for the community. So, in my experience, not as long as yours, then the different dynamics to how archetypes come about. You know, so you get the national driven, which tend to be sporadic, but well funded, and that'll generate, that process, and by virtue of that, they're slower, and they can accept that. But then at the other end of the scale, you get like local, a single hospital or a single healthcare organisation implement things, and they're implemented, and they need to implement now. So they don't have the ability to go through that governance process to get those high quality archetypes. So by virtue of that, what they do is they will take from CKM, people good at taking from CKM, but don't contribute back to CKM. You know, so
I know.
you get the proliferation of local archetypes, which kind of, at worst case, are just never published anywhere, but maybe published in their corporate GitHub repository or something like that, but are never folded back into the fold. So the discoverability of those is just nil, really. Now, as openEHR grows, which it is clearly doing, that's going to proliferate even more. So, I mean, it's not going to job to solve the problem, but you know, seeing as you've been in this space for so long, what are your thoughts on how we can make the discoverability of things, or the path to getting things into CKM, more amenable to these kind of votes?
I mean, there has to be some. I mean, you cannot force anybody to offer their archetypes there. I mean, you can, and they are essentially open source, like all the archetypes on CKM, but you can't force anybody. But you can upload them as archetype proposals to the openEHR CKM. Anybody can do that, and they will be dealt with. So the kind of technical infrastructure more or less is there. We could do something like connected to just Git repositories and do a lot of smart things, I agree. And that would help, I agree. But it remains that there's a lot simply, I mean, some of this is simply beyond our control. We just can get better over the years and maybe even over the decades. But we're making progress, and this is the important part of it, I think.
Great. All right, well, thank you, Sebastian, and thank you, all of you, for the participation, a great morning session. I will remind you that there's lunch. I think there's a networking event as well over lunch, Shabby? Not today? Okay, well, you're free there. So enjoy lunch, and yeah, we'll be back here at 2 o'clock. So thank you very much.